So now the last way the employers steal wages is by not paying you for all the hours that you work. So I'm going to give you 3 things that you can do to make sure that you're always going to be paid for the hours that you work. All right, so the first thing that you need to do, there's no slide for this. The first thing that you need to do is punch in to work the minute that you're required to be there. So by law, for the most part, your employer is required to begin paying you at the time they make you or require that you be at the job site. An example of this is in construction business. An employer might tell an employee, well, first thing, come to the yard, help load the truck with all the tools, and once we drive out to the construction site, that's when you really start to do the work, and that's when we start counting your hours. That employee has just been a victim of wage theft because they're not getting paid for all the time when they were loading the truck or driving out to that work site. Okay, so the second thing you need to make sure is that there are no unlawful deductions taken from your paycheck. So the first thing we said was make sure you punch in first thing in the morning. Second thing is make sure there's no unlawful deductions taken from your paycheck. So the most frequent unlawful deduction that we find that's made is a deduction for lunch. And there's a legal definition of lunch. Lunch does not mean that you got to eat food. Lunch means that you had a complete break from work that day. So the problem arises when an employer does not let you take the full break, that you eat your food while you're performing work. And if you're working during that time, you need to be paid for that time. But what happens is an employer will deduct the money from your paycheck anyway, even though you work from that period of time. So I see it a lot in restaurant industries. A waiter will have to eat food while they're serving the customers, and at the end of the week, there's a half hour each day taken out of their paycheck, and that would be an unlawful deduction. All right, and the last thing is to make sure that you never perform any work when you're off the clock. So once you punch out from work, you should go home or do whatever else you want. If your boss requires that you still perform work, or they say, hey, can you do a couple more things, you need to punch back in. All right, so once you punch out, make sure you're not doing any work.